Welcome to the Cisco Modelling Labs and nuGen Interoperability video. My name is Craig Brown, Technical Marketing Engineer at Cisco. The agenda will be looking at the overview of the network components, going through the step-by-step configuration, and then discovering the virtual network using the nuGen product. So let's take a look at the network diagram. We start with a PC that goes through a switch, through the CML server, and then up to the virtual network. The virtual network has a flat connection, which is a 172.19.051. That's connected to the CML server, and then also connected to the physical switch through the 172.19.0.1 address. The flat network address is configured as part of the CML server, and that's configured within the settings.init file. The nuGen server is then configured also on the same flat network with the 172.19.0.49 address. Now these are separate to the actual physical server addresses. These are the addresses that gives them configuration to that network, and that's also configured in the nuGen server under Network and Properties. We'll go through these in more detail. So let's start with configuring the vSphere. When we take a look at the way it's set up at the moment, we'll go down and look at the properties for the switch that we're going to be connecting to. We can see that the physical device that we're going to be connecting to, the IP address of that physical device, as well as the port. So let's take a look at the switch, that physical switch that we're going to connect to, and just confirm that information. So this is the physical switch. There's a number of commands we can do. The first one being the show interface trunk command, and we can confirm the port, which is gigabit 08, is part of that, the 19 and 20 VLANs. You can see there gigabit 08, and that's confirmed the devices are connected there. We can do a show IP ARP and have confirm the IP address and the VLAN that IP address is part of, and then also show VLANs to see if the VLAN 19 is there as well. So this is just confirming that we are configured our vSphere to our physical server correctly. We can then create our flat connection and our SNAT connection on the vSphere, which is what we'll use to connect the CML server and the nuGen server to. So we'll follow through the steps. Change the network label to flat. Change the VLAN ID to match the correct VLAN number. So in this case it will be VLAN 19. And then we'll do the same thing for the SNAT address as well. Throughout this demonstration we're only going to be using the flat, but we'll configure the SNAT at the same time just for completion of the task. And SNAT's going to be on VLAN 20. The next thing we have to do is go back to those two network connections and change their promiscuous mode to accept. So if we select on edit and then just change the value under security, and then we'll do the same thing for the SNAT connection as well. So now you can see that we have both the flat and the SNAT, and VLAN 19 and 20 have been set up. So the next thing to do is to add those network adapters to CML. So if we go in and edit the virtual machine settings, we can then add the additional network adapters, and with adding those network adapters we'll add the flat and the SNAT. And that means when we start CML we'll also have those adapters available, so we'll be able to go through that flat and SNAT network. So what you can see now is it's adding in the flat network, and we'll do the same thing, we'll add in the SNAT network as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing to the nuGen server. So we go on the nuGen server, we'll edit the virtual machine settings, and then we'll also add the flat network adapter to the nuGen server as well. So So we'll click on Add and then follow through the prompts. Alright, so the next thing to do is to start CML, and then we'll configure CML as well. So we just click on that and click on Power on the machine. Then we'll go on to the login. So in this case I'm going to SSH onto the CML machine. The reason why I'm SSHing and not using the console is just for speed. So I'll now go and have a look at the ifconfig. And I'm able to see that my bridged Ethernet connection is the 172.19.0.54. And see if I can ping my switch, which is the 172.19.0.1, and yes, I can ping the switch as well. So let's have a look at the picture again and confirm those details. So I was able to go from the CML server, which we now have the setting there of the 172.19.0.54, and that was able to ping down to the physical switch, which is the 172.19.0.1. So the next thing to do is start the nuGen, so we can see if we can get from the nuGen server to the same thing. So we kick the nuGen server off with power on, and then we go into the control panel to configure it. So we go into Network and Internet, Network and Sharing Center, and then edit the interface. You can see here in the properties that the interface will be configured already. I did that beforehand, but if we go to the TCP/IP, there you can see there 049 is the address that I've been assigning it to, and the default gateway is the 0.1, and that's the default gateway of the switch, of the physical switch that we pointed to. So when we look at the 172.19.0.49, let's compare that to CML and to see where we got that address from. Make sure we're not overlapping with any of the CML addresses that exist as well. So if we go back into CML, that's the CML server, and we go to the settings.init file, we can have a look at the values that have been set in settings.init to make sure we're not overlapping on any of these addresses. So you can see in the root directory, or the home directory I should say, of this file account that we logged in as, there's a settings.init file. If we scroll down on that file, I just used a vi in this sample. If we scroll down and have a look, you can see there's a number of IP addresses. For these IP addresses, if we scroll down, we'll see that we have the 172.19.0.1 address, which is the IP address of our physical switch. We have the 172.19.0.254 via the 172.19.0.50 to 250. So we'll start with a ipconfig command and just confirm that we are 172.19.0.49. So now if we ping the 172.19.0.254, which is the CML server, we can actually reach the CML server as well. If we ping .1, which is the switch, we can also reach the switch, the physical switch. So if we have a look at that from the picture, and just to confirm that against the picture as well, we can see we can go 172.19.0.49, which is the address on the CML, address on the nuGen, to the CML, and then also down to the switch as well. Let's set up the CML server and get that configuration running as well. So we've just got 3 routers connected to a flat network. We know the flat network is going to create us an address. So router 3 is the gateway router going to the flat network. So we click on the start simulation, and this will switch us across to the simulation view, and then we can see the simulation is now started. We'll be able to see that we have a 172.19.0.51 address, which was given as the external address, which is that there, and that's on router 3. So if we open up a console port to router 3, we can also do some commands just to confirm those IP addresses are what we're expecting as well. So we can see that we have an interface of 172.19.0.51, and if we turn on debugging for ICMP, and there's just the command there, and then if we do a ping test, what we'll be able to see is we'll be able to see the ICMP packets coming in, just to confirm that we are truly reaching the router that we think that we're trying to reach as well. So we'll go back to the remote desktop for the nuGen server, and we'll split that screen and then show the router as well. And then when we ping from the nuGen server to the router, we'll be able to see the debug commands coming in as well. So kick off the pin text, and then this is going to be the IP address of the external connection on that router, which is the 172.19.051. So let's have a look at this from the picture perspective as well. And you can see what we're doing here is we're pinging from the nuGen server through the CML server up to that flat network, which is running in our virtual network. So what about the 10 network? Because the 10 network's been configured. So let's try to see if we can reach the 10 network, which is running in our virtual network. The answer is going to be no, by the way. So there it is there, it fails. And the reason being is we don't have necessarily a route. So let's have a look at the routes on the nuGen server. And if we look at that, we don't really, well, if we look at that, we see we don't have a route to the 10 network. So it doesn't know how to reach that 10 network. So what we're going to have to do is add a route in order to know which way to get to those routers beyond the 172 network. So if we put in a route statement, so we're going to say that for any 10 network, we're going to send it to the 172.19.0.51 router, which is the CML gateway router that we configured. We also want to make this a permanent connection, so we're going to put a -P, and the -P just means that make this persistent, so even if we reboot the nuGen server, the command's going to stay. So we got OK. If we look at our routes table again, we can now see that we have a route for the 10 network, and the gateway is the CML virtual router that's running in our virtual network, that's running on our CML server. So what this is going to let us do is when we discover the gateway router, we being the nuGen server, it's going to know about the 10 network. The nuGen server will now have access to reach further into that network, into that 10 network, to discover those other subsequent routers as well. So now when we do our ping test, you can see we can actually reach those routers. And you can see the ping test is coming through on the gateway router because it's passing through there as well. So the next thing you do is start up the nuGen client. And so we can get that configured so that will also start drawing up the network. So we'll launch that from our PC. And what we'll be doing is connecting to the server. It's already connected, but I'll reconnect just to show that. And then this is the IP address of the physical server. So this is not the IP address of the flat network we're trying to connect to. It's the IP address of the server because we're using my laptop. So my PC is connected to the nuGen server. So if we look down here, that's the IP address of the nuGen server. And then I'm connecting from my PC to that. One thing we have to do is configure the routers. So for the nuGen server to telnet in, for every single router, you need to put in a username of Cisco or whatever you want to do. In this case, we're using Cisco, and set up the VTY as well. For the gateway router that you have, you need to set up that you're redistributing the routes. Otherwise, when you try to learn about what's in the network, it's not going to know how to reach those networks. Now this is specific for my network configuration. You may do it differently for your gateway. But essentially what needs to happen is that from your gateway router that the nuGen server is connecting to, it needs to be able to know about and to get to the other routers. Otherwise they won't be discovered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my Cisco Monitoring Labs client, and I'm going to configure that information into the routers. So we'll have a running configuration. So we're going to go into our running config, we're going to go into the actual router, and then we're going to go into the configuration, and we're going to put in those commands. If you're looking for those commands, they are in the supplemental installation documentation that also goes with this video. So that's what we put in every single router. That's the commands we use for every single router. The commands that we'd use just for this gateway router, these are the commands here. There was a typo there, but router OSPF1, and then put in the redistribute command. Now we'll do this for every router, but for this video I've only done it for the one, but it has been done for all the other routers as well. The next thing we have to do is to copy the configuration from this running config and copy it to your local configuration that's running locally on your PC. If you don't do this, when you shut down this simulation, the configuration will be lost. So the next step is to extract that configuration. So we use the extract configuration option. Say OK. What that's saying is making sure that there's no external telnets. Say OK for that. We can see the configurations are being extracted. And then once that's finished, it could take a couple of minutes depending on how many routers are running. Once that's finished, then we'll know we've backed everything up and we're safe to continue. So with all the extractions now complete, we'll be able to move on. We can actually look into the configurations of each of the routers to make sure that the configurations occurred. If we go to the configuration tab and we scroll down, we'll be able to see the different commands that we put in. So there's our username, Cisco, privilege, etc. command, and if we go down to the bottom, we'll see our line VTY command as well. There's our redistribute connected subnets that we wanted, and then here's our VTY. And again, this is just to allow the nuGen server access to the routers so that it can learn information about the network. So we repeated this for all the routers. We just looked at router 3 in this example, but this has been repeated for all the other routers as well. Just cut that out. No point showing you the videos of the same thing over and over again. So we'll go back to the Discovery Wizard and we'll configure that so that it knows how to talk to the CML server. We're just going to select on a workspace. This number, I'm selecting number 19. We then go to Tools, Discovery Wizard. And this is where we put in the information that we need. So for workspace 19, I need to put the server address in. And this is the server address of the nuGen server. I can save a profile if I want. There's a bunch of options that you can play around with. We're just going to do a very basic setup here. So we'll go for the common connection, which is the default gateway. Now this is the default gateway. This is the IP address of the virtual router. So in our case, it's the 172.19.051. For our telnet options, we're going to put in the information that we put in each of the routers, so the VTY, login and so forth. So you can see here we used, that's where we configured it, we used Cisco as the password. So VTY Cisco, enable is Cisco, and then our telnet credentials, it's Cisco and Cisco. So in this example it's pretty straightforward. I can do other options, SNMP, SSH, ping sweeps. I'm just going to disable those. I don't want to do them for this example. Something very simple. And then we're going to do start now. So what's happening is the nuGen server is connecting to the virtual router. It's discovering the routes and all the information. You can see there it's discovered that virtual router now, number 3. It's now telnetting and discovering the other routers as well. The amount of time that it takes to do this will depend on the size of your network. We have a very small network, so it's pretty straightforward. With all this information discovered, we'll then be able to close the Discovery Wizard and then see what picture we have. Again, in this example, we're just doing something very, very basic, so you don't really get the full impact, but the important here was to show you how to configure it, not to give you that lots of routers. So here we've discovered 3 devices, and we can see it in that 3D picture as well. So this concludes the presentation on how to set up the interoperability between the 2 devices. My name is Craig Brown, and thank you for your time.